Welcome to Scanner School session number 27. Today we have an interview with Michael Mann. Michael is really big into military aviation monitoring. And before we jump right into the interview, I want to play a little bit of something that Michael's posted on his Facebook page, and we'll link it to his page a little bit later in the session. But right now, before we start anything, let's take a listen to what Mike's recorded and what he hears on a day-to-day basis right here on Scanner School.
Surrey's already west.
Surrey, turn in, fights on.
45, 17,000, bogey.
Level 8.
Surrey, copy, skill.
Get off.
Razor 3, knock it off.
Knock it off.
By 26013, 18,000, bogey. Bra 11020, 18,000, bogey. Bullseye 28217.
Targeted, in group.
Surrey, ready, west.
Fights on.
Surrey, targeted group. Bullseye 283, 38, 18,000, bogey.
746, 15,000, bogey.
Turn. Go average on. Rear can, make a 1. Picture.
Welcome to the Scanner School, a podcast dedicated to the scanner radio hobby. Class is about to begin. Here is your host, Phil Lichtenberger.
Let me tell you, that is cool stuff. If I lived over or near a training facility, I think I'd be listening to that stuff daily as well. Welcome to Scanner School. My name is Phil Lichtenberger. My amateur radio call sign is W2LIE, and this podcast is here to teach you everything that you need to know about the scanner radio hobby. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, let me say thank you and welcome, and thanks for joining us. For those of you who have been past supporters of the podcast, I want to say welcome back. This will wrap up our aviation series that we've been running kind of off and on for the last couple of weeks. I know we took a 2-week break to talk about the Unit and SDS 100 and also Amateur Radio Field Day, which as I am touching up this podcast, will begin in about 20 minutes. So I'm looking forward to tuning up the HF rig in a little bit and giving that a listen. But if you're interested in listening to what Field Day is or was about, why don't you check out scannerschool.com/session26. So we have a couple of links that we're going to talk about in the session here. All of the links that we talk about are in our show notes, and our show notes are at scannerschool.com/session27. So I'm not going to ramble on any further. We're going to jump right into the interview with Michael Mann. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on very short notice on the podcast today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely nice to meet new people.
It certainly is. And you're also, too, you're a brand new member of our Facebook community, so I want to thank you very much for being a member over there. So just tell us a little bit about, you're into military air monitoring. What is MilAir monitoring?
Just monitoring the UHF communications between the aircraft during their training exercises in the military training airspace out here, where I'm at.
Okay, so
basically what it is.
All right, and tell us about yourself. Where are you at, and what do you use for scanning?
I am in Arizona. I use 2 different base station radios: a Radio Shack Pro 296 and a Unit 536 HP digital scanner. And I do a lot of volunteer work with the Forest Service, and so when we're out there, we would see these military just screaming overhead, and that's why I got into when I listened to them. Excellent.
So you live pretty close to a military base then?
Actually, the nearest one's Nellis, and the next one is Luke up in by Phoenix.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But you're in their play yard then, I guess?
Yeah, we're right in the middle of the play yard. They come over every day.
Excellent. So I guess that's definitely a reason to get into MilAir monitoring. That's really cool. So,
yes, it is.
So again, you were saying that's how you got started in it, by just basically, it was something that was going on that you were exposed to daily, and you figured out a way to monitor and hear what's going on. So
yep.
What kind of things do you typically hear when you're listening to MilAir?
Dogfights, mostly dogfights, aerial tanking, occasional emergencies. We actually just recently had a F-16 lose his engine overhead, and he attempted to do an emergency landing at the local airport, which ended really badly for the aircraft. The pilot himself ejected safely, which was a very nice thing to hear. At least he got out okay.
Okay, and you were able to listen to that as it happened?
Yeah, I actually was picking up on my Project 25 on the unit end, step by step from the moment the fire dispatch got the call to the moment the pilot ejected as he wasn't able to stop his aircraft on the runway.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah.
That's definitely puts you in the cockpit with the pilots,
Yep.
at the same time. So you were saying it was P25. So let's back up a little bit with MilAir monitoring. MilAir monitoring is typically done
On
AM
UHF.
and
Yeah.
right. So explain exactly where it is that you're monitoring the band.
Well, it's just the standard UHF frequencies, which I got right here. Let me bring it up real quick so I can give you an idea of the frequencies that we're talking about. And so, like, one of the frequencies in UHF we pick up a lot of input is 317.7500 is one of the main frequencies we got out here. So we're constantly picking up tanking, and we got dogfights at Baghdad military training, which is only 40 miles from here, so you can imagine how quick it gets going.
Right, and that's the other beauty too about we talked about in previous Scanner School podcasts is when it comes to aviation monitoring, you don't have to be right on top of them. It's not really so much physical line of sight; it's RF line of sight. So you could, with the right setup, you could listen 100 miles out, with what's going on. So they don't need to be exactly screaming overhead to be picking them up. So you were saying it's all AM too, right? AM
Yep.
modulation. Perfect.
It is, and it's real easy to do.
Right, but the real catch here though is you have to have a scanner that picks up that 380 to whatever the I don't have off the top of my head right now, but the split.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and again we'll put the correct split post podcast. So if somebody wants to get into MilAir for the very first time, what does one need to pick up in order to start listening?
Well, the newer scanners are pretty good for that, like the Uniden 536, which was the base model for Uniden, but you can always pick up an older Radio Shack Pro 296, which is great for the same thing, and it's way more sensitive, so you're able to really, really bring in the frequencies that you're listening for.
Right,
and
so key point here, it doesn't take a $500 scanner to get into MilAir monitoring.
No, it doesn't. You can go on eBay and pick up one of these Radio Shacks for $150 and be good to go.
Right. And I know a lot of people they hold on to the older scanners when it's a good way to recycle your radio too. If you have a system that went P25, went encrypted, went something that the old scanner won't pick up, if your scanner picks up MilAir, like even the old 780s, was that a 20-year-old radio at this point? The 780 XLT or something along that line makes a very good MilAir monitoring scanner as well. It does.
Yes, it sure does. My 996 sort of does it. It's not, capable of doing what these other radios are, but it does pick up a lot of interesting stuff aviation-wise.
So what's the difference between what the 996 does and what your other radios do that don't make it work so well?
Well, the older Uniden has, I call them birdies, where you'll be listening to the radio and you hear like a insanely loud, like a high-pitched noise come from it because it's having trouble monitoring some of the aviation frequencies, where those other ones don't do that. It's like you're sitting in the cockpit with the pilot while he's talking, and it's perfectly clear.
Okay, so it's got a little bit more interference on the AM than.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's good to know. So if somebody is looking first time, they pick the radio up from eBay or they dust off an old one. What kind of tips would you have for somebody who just took the radio out of the box and is now looking to get into MilAir monitoring? Where should they begin?
Well, I started by Googling and finding out what kind of antennas I was going to need and things of that sort. So I would say just, get on Google, jump on there and search around a little bit to find out what the training areas are, and look at Sky Vector, because they have a lot of the frequencies written down, so you don't have to do too much to find it most of the time. But go to Radio Reference and find what frequencies are out there, and you can even do close call searches, because that's a good way of getting good channels, or listen to the aircraft control band, and then they will be assigning frequencies to the military aircraft. It's one way to find them.
Yeah, close call in a situation like this kind of earns its keep in a scanner, I guess you could say. Not one of my favorite things to have on all the time, close call, but certainly in a situation like this, that if you don't know what's out there, and again, I've used close call exactly for this. We have the Marines; they come in for Fleet Week every year around Memorial Day weekend, and they do their demonstration exercises at this Eisenhower Park, which is about 20 minutes away from here. And they rope off one of the fields, and a bunch of the helicopters come flying in. I think they had the Osprey one year, and they do a whole tactical demonstration for everybody. And they do broadcast it on the PA system so everybody can hear them come in. It's really cool to actually hear them, go through their whole rundown. But the close call picks up on it immediately on the scanner. And unfortunately, every year the frequency changes, so it's not something that you can put in ahead of time. But just having a close call and having it beep in and then hearing it as it's coming over to the PA speaker and just knowing that they're up there, that again, close call is one of those things that really helps out when you want to do MilAir monitoring.
It does, though occasionally you have to, when you're doing it for the first time, you gotta figure out what you want to search for, because if you just turn the close call on, you're gonna get everything from kids playing on walkie-talkies to your local radio station just blabbing away, and it's kind of hard to filter it out sometimes because it's so common that you pick up stuff you don't want to hear.
Right, exactly. So it's a little bit of prep work just to understand what bands you want to turn on. Basically, is what we're talking about here. You can turn the bands off and on in the close call. So it's a little bit different than doing a search. But that's the other thing too. Like if you don't have close call, right, you could do a search on the band, but I wouldn't recommend that either, because typically, though, how long is a MilAir conversation? How long does a typical microphone stay keyed?
Well, I've been getting them about 10 minutes sometimes on some of the stuff I've been capturing. Let me see here. I got some from a couple of days ago. The longest one I got on here from a few days ago when they were out here exercising was about 9 minutes on some of them.
Okay, but it's not a constant carrier though. It's AM, right? So as they're talking, there's a carrier, and then the frequency drops between speaking, or is it something different out by you?
It's constant. It's nonstop. I mean,
okay.
You can be sitting here listening to constant radio traffic. The longest one out of all the ones I have here on my computer is 33 minutes, and that was a pure 100% dogfight.
Wow.
Over between NATO and the U.S. Air Force guys. You can hear the French pilots and the Canadians talking, and them calling aircraft types, and tankers are talking, and AWACS is responding. It's pretty intense.
That is cool. That is really cool to be able to do. So, I mean, because I was only asking that question because I know when I listen to MilAir over here, it's a little bit different because we don't have. I mean, we have overhead flight routes and we have a couple of bases, but it's nothing compared to where you are. It's usually an event. Somebody's going to come through and they're going to fly up down the Hudson, scream over a stadium, Fleet Week, those kinds of things, the air show when it comes in. And those transmissions are very short. It's basically long enough to have the sentence, and then you don't hear anything else after that. So that's why I was asking you if you had any difference or any luck between using close call or using search. So it sounds like where you are, though, search mode would work just as well as using close call sometimes.
Yep, as long as you have it trimmed to whatever, make sure you don't pick up all the NOAA weather radio and all that stuff. You just need to get it in the ballpark as close as you can. Then, and once you pick them up and you know what frequency the band they're going to be using, you just write it down on a piece of paper and modify what you're doing.
Okay. So most of the stuff you said though was UHF, but not VHF.
It's just UHF, okay. And then they occasionally switch to the VHF frequencies when they're talking to center or, intercepting someone that flies into their training airspace, which just gets kind of interesting.
I'm sure. I'm sure that's good too. I'm sure the other pilot on the other end isn't exactly very calm when he comes back when there's an F-16 on his tail, right?
Oh, we had a Learjet 2 days ago fly into the training exercise, and he was not responding, and so they decided to try him on the VHF, and to a point that they had 4 F-18s decide to play with them a little bit until they started talking to him, and that got his attention real quick.
Yeah, I'm sure it would. That's cool that you can listen to all that out by you. I mean, it's definitely a different world between where you are and where I am as far as what you're able to listen to, and it's really cool that that you have something like that to monitor. So, what is your basic setup that you have at home right now that you're listening with? You said you have a Pro 2096 and you have a Uniden BC 536 HP.
Yes.
What's the rest of your setup like?
That's basically what it is. I just have my roof antennas, which are quite old. I don't remember what they are, but the range on them is at least 200 miles. I can actually be sitting here at my office. I'm picking up guys at 29 Palms, talking to the ATC as they come into the military training exercise areas. So, yeah, it's got pretty good range.
Excellent. And you just run a line out into a recorder, into your computer, and that's how you log in all the transmissions?
Yeah, I actually have on my older radio, I have a audio cable going to the mic input with a voice-activated recorder. I can't think of the name right now, but what it does is you can only tell it to record when someone's talking, so you don't get, a really long empty space audio file. Though the 536 has got a built-in recorder, which is very handy to have because it doesn't require really have a computer to tell it to record. You just hit the function button, hit replay, and asks you want to start recording? Hit yes.
Excellent. That certainly does make things a whole lot easier as well. You were saying you could find some frequencies online. You gave SkyVector as another one. Do you have any other resources that if somebody is scanning or if somebody is in an area and they're brand new to MilAir, where would somebody can go to? They can get a list of frequencies that you'd recommend they'd start out with?
Well, I have one saved, but I'm not sure where the link is right now. I do recommend going to the Facebook group for the Military Air and Space Communications. They have a large amount of people in there that are very helpful for that kind of thing. And they have a lot of good stuff on there talking about channels and stuff.
Excellent. We'll link to that in the show notes of the podcast as well. This way we'll link in there on the website. So listen to whatever session. I don't know what session number this podcast is while we're recording it, but we'll put that in on post as well. What about besides Facebook? Are there any other magazines or any other groups that you would recommend?
As far as I know, that's the only one I use because most of the stuff I just stumble across just by listening to the aircraft control talking to the military jets.
Excellent. And that's like one of the best things too about scanning too is you've really put the original part of the hobby back into it. Instead of going to on a website and just putting information from a web page or a magazine or a forum into your scanner and being locked into what's been published, you're doing what the hobby is great at, right? You're finding something new out on your own. You're using the tools that are in front of you to do so, and I can feel like the excitement that when you find something new, or when close call hits, or you're doing a quick search and you're finding something and you realize what's going on to it. I mean, it's really nice to not only get that information and share it with other people and get what other people have shared to you, but to really find out something brand new on your own and figure out who it is and who's talking and where they're coming from. And then, being able to do the homework and then, having that information in front of you and adding that now into your collection is really one of the cool things about scanning. I kind of feel it's starting to become a lost art. So it's glad, I'm happy to hear that you're still able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not too fond of those websites that just broadcast everything to everyone so that, that's why you have when you get into scanning and you find some whether it's audio broadcasting places that takes the fun out of it. It's like no one ever, that makes everyone else want to buy them, so the prices go through the roof.
Yep.
Type thing.
Exactly. So you've talked about a couple of conversations that you've heard over the air. The F-18 pilots that shook down a Learjet. You talked about one of the pilots that ejected safely, thankfully,
yep.
And you listened to the whole thing from start to finish. Do you have any other good stories or something like that something that sticks in your mind, something that excited you that you've heard while listening to MilAir?
Yeah, actually, there was a pretty entertaining one. I was we have a place in Mexico that we go down during the summertime because it's so hot where I'm at, and I have a very good band antenna that I've hooked up, and so I can listen to the guys up in San Diego. I picked up a Coast Guard aircraft ghosting a drug boat, actually, and they called in the military Hercules to follow it, and apparently the C-130 had all kinds of the thermal vision on it, and you can hear them describing the boat. You hear them describing how many people are on the boat and where it was going, and it was quite interesting.
Very, very cool. It's something I got to try out here, being on Long Island. It's a little bit outside of the, I guess, the drug area, but if you were down in Miami or something like that, I'm sure you'd hear a lot of activity like that as well coming in.
You would. And plus, if you're anywhere near a Navy base or Marine base, that's pretty interesting because you hear some stuff that you probably would scratch your head thinking, what are these guys talking about? But when you listen to it long enough, you realize the instructor, what he's doing is trying to teach the guy how to either use the radar or telling him how to work stuff. Like I picked up a transmission that was quite interesting a few days ago where they were trying to teach a student how to operate the radar and locking system on an F-18 and telling him that he's pulling out too soon in the turn or he was too slow at reacting, and so it gets kind of interesting.
Very, very cool. So it sounds like there's always something new to listen to when it comes to MilAir, and it sounds almost as better than watching TV at times.
It is. It's so much more fun.
Excellent.
And you hear just the most craziest things ever.
So, I mean, and there's routine stuff you hear too, I would assume, like just refueling and stuff like that you're able to monitor?
Definitely.
And
We're
say, what kind of stuff do you listen? Like, what kind of stuff do you hear when it's a refueling? Do you hear them line up the planes, or what kind of stuff does that bring in?
Well, when they're coming in the tank, you actually hear the individual aircrafts calling their call signs off, or their actual bureau numbers, as you know, that they have fonted on the side of the aircraft. So the lead aircraft says we're a flight of 4, and then the tanker says, "What's your guys' numbers?" And they go call the individual aircraft bureau numbers off of the tanker, and then they give them permission to start hooking up one after another. And sometimes it's kind of hard to hear the European pilots when they have to do that because they talk so quick. So it's kind of fun.
Really cool. So what else? What other types of things are you listening to when it comes to MilAir?
Well, we've heard them a couple of times. They had actual aircraft hitting birds and hitting different things. Like someone had something, I think it was, fall off another jet in front of him and strike the guy behind him. And so he had to go back to Camp Pendleton or back to 29 Palms, whichever airfield was closest to him.
Okay. So it definitely sounds like there's more than enough out there to listen to. You just got to find it, more or less. So,
yep.
But like you said, you also have a list of go-to frequencies in your scanner that typically are the busiest for your area. What kind of frequencies are those? Is it like you said, NORAD and a refueling frequency? Like what kind of stuff do you find that never really change and stay current on a particular frequency?
Well, the frequencies actually don't ever really change out here. They're always the same. Occasionally, I'll hear them announce a new frequency. I'll just grab my scratch paper and write it down and see what comes up on that frequency they're talking about. You'll hear stuff you wouldn't expect. I heard tanks talk on the radio the other day. A platoon of M1 Abrams out in the middle of the California desert during a big training exercise.
Very, very cool. So it sounds like I'm going to do some more MilAir monitoring myself. So.
Yeah, I've got a nationwide frequencies. I'll be glad to share with you guys on the group if you would like a copy of it.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be a great idea. So I think what we'll do is, if you don't mind posting it on the Facebook group, and if anybody's interested in seeing that list of frequencies, all you got to do is go to scannerschool.com/Facebook group, and we will pin that post for a while, and we'll also pin that post. We'll link directly to it in the show notes too for this podcast as well, so you can jump right to if you want to go to scannerschool.com and look for the show notes for this session. So, Michael, you've been doing this How many years have you been monitoring MilAir?
Well, it's hard to remember. It's been a long time.
So you have a lot. Basically, you've got a lot of recordings on your computer
Yes.
and in the scanner. What do you typically do with them? Do you keep them for yourself or do you share them?
I share them actually. I've been posting them on my little page I have on Facebook. I was posting them on YouTube, but there's one person that really is getting on my nerves lately. He stole my audio clip from the F-16 accident and failed to give credit, and you know how that works. It's never fun. So most of my stuff's on my Facebook now.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to be one of those things that once the audio is out there, people believe that it's fair game, and I think it's par for the course. Unfortunately, people are just not going to respect that this is something you captured and you posted, and they just say, hey, nobody's gonna come after me anyway, or if they are, then it's. But that's don't let one person ruin it for you, though. I mean, it's going to happen, and truthfully, between me and you, and I've been there before. It takes one person to really foul everything up for you, but don't forget that for every one person that fouls it up, there might be 100 or 200 or 1,000 people who are silent that really love what you're doing. And it could take 1,000 people to say, hey, great job, but it takes that one person to say, don't do it, you stink. And that's the only person you hear. So,
Yeah.
I mean, my thought to you is, digest a little bit what happened with that one, but I wouldn't hold it back from you sharing, what you like and everything else. And if it bothers you that much too, you can even put a subtone in there or something in the audio that's really low that just repeats over and over again, copyright material found on, your YouTube page. So that might be a way around it too. But where can we find you on YouTube for some of the other videos that you had?
Well, moved all of that to my Facebook page, which is Mike's Scanner Hobby. I actually posted a link to it already on the Scanner School, and you can listen to all kinds of good stuff that I pick up that I've shared.
Okay, so it's Mike's Scanner Hobby is the Facebook group, and again,
Page.
Okay, it's a page. And just a quick question: why a page, not a group?
In a group, it requires people to join the group to be able to view it. If you have it as a closed thing and on a page, it's easier to control what gets posted. I don't need to get, when you get a whole bunch of bots trying to join, it gets quite irritating quite quick. I have run a couple of groups for different subjects, and we get flooded constantly by people that have nothing to do with what we're trying to get people into. Like, you try to put a thing up for photography, aviation photography, and you get people that clearly have nothing to do with aviation trying to join, just to spam everybody out.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those unfortunate things as well. But I've had a lot more success with groups instead of pages. That's just why I was asking about, about why you went with the page instead of the group. I think that Facebook likes to rank groups better than pages. To be honest with you, I have if I look at the Scanner School page versus the Scanner School group, it seems like I could post the same thing in both locations, and the group one gets a lot more activity than the page one. So the page one kind of gets buried in there. So, you can always open up that group too to just be completely open the same way a page would be, and people can just come in and view the material. You can make the video, make it public as well. So, but I think you're doing a great service by just what you've shared here already on the podcast, and what you were posting online for YouTube, and what you've been posting on the group as well for your own personal page. It's nice to see that you're sharing the stuff that you're finding, and just by doing that too, you're doing the hobby a great service, because you're getting more people interested in doing this for themselves. And that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast today to kind of explain your process and what's out there, and give you a little bit more exposure, and also the hobby of military aviation monitoring. I think it's a great part of the hobby that doesn't require anything too crazy to get started. Just a radio that covers the MilAir band, a halfway decent antenna, external antenna, right? And
Definitely.
And you're off to the races, so to speak.
Yeah, it's definitely a good external antenna. If you have anything else, it's going to be kind of hard to get anything worthwhile listening to.
Exactly.
So yes, you need a good antenna on your roof of your house, and try to put it as high as possible, and They're having fun.
Yep, excellent. So you have, like I said, you have your Facebook page, which we'll link to again in the show notes. What was it, Michael's Scanner Hobby? Mike's Scanner Hobby?
Yes.
Okay, and then you have anything else that you want to plug before we go?
No, that's good. Hopefully everyone that wants to learn how to do this jumps in, gets to learn how to do it, and I'm more than happy to help out. If you need something, just let me know.
Excellent. So I want to thank you so much for spending the time today for teaching us about how to get involved with military aviation, what you can hear, some of the stuff you've heard. It sounds like there's plenty of activity. Now, one more question before you go: do you find that certain times of the day are the busiest for you, or is it all the time?
Actually, in the mornings it's slow, but as the day goes on, it gets more and more active. Though last couple of days it's slowed down a little bit. I'm believing it's just because the pilots finished or whatever they were training, and they're gonna probably start up in a week or so again. But normally we hear so much activity, it's almost impossible to make heads or tails of what they're saying because there's so much stuff going on.
Right, and again, you're in a little bit of a different world than I am. I'm outside of a training facility, and you sounds like you live over one or under one.
Yeah. We're right in the dead center of one of the biggest training areas in California and Arizona. I mean, you walk outside and you see a C-130 going over and a KC-135 refueling them. So yeah, it was pretty constant military activity.
Excellent. Years and years and years ago, we had Grumman right here in Bethpage, Long Island, and we'd see the planes flying out overhead as they were doing test runs or whatever. It was like clockwork. They'd leave, they'd take off from the Grumman facility over here, and they'd fly out over the Atlantic, and they'd do a couple loops and come back in again. But that was way before I was involved with beyond scanning what I do now. Back in those days, it was let me hear the police and fire. If Grumman was still on the island now and those things were flying overhead, yeah, you bet I'd be joining you and listening to them. So.
Yeah, I agree. I used to be only public safety stuff, but for being volunteering with the Forest Service and hearing that constantly every day for weeks and weeks and weeks, it gets kind of irritating.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the first time I actually really wish I had a radio that did UHF, I was driving through the California desert and an F-14 buzzed my truck, and man, that was loud.
I bet you were as surprised as that Learjet pilot.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure.
Very good.
All I remember seeing was a twin engine and the flames coming out the backside as I went by.
Wow, that's insane. So, all right, Mike. Well, thank you very much for being a guest on today's podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time, and again, I want to thank you for telling our audience exactly how easy it is to get involved with military air and the stuff they can hear, and hopefully that when other people get into this part of the hobby, if they join the Facebook group, again, scannerschool.com/Facebook group, tag Michael, let him know, thank him for letting him introduce this part of the hobby to you, and let us know what it is that you guys are hearing. So, Michael, thank you very much for being our guest today.
You're welcome, and you have a great rest of your weekend.
Yep, you too. Thanks. All right, Michael, thank you so much for your interview and being a part of the Scanner School community. If anybody wants to join the Scanner School community, you can do so very easily. We have a nice little community set up right now on Facebook, and you can join it at scannerschool.com/Facebook group. And as usual, I'm very big into Twitter, and if you have any questions for me or you're trying to get in touch with me, the best way and the fastest way to do so is via Twitter, scannerschool.com/Twitter. And also, I've been doing something new lately, so if you want to know a little bit more about what happens behind the scenes here and anything else that's going on with the Scanner School podcast, and I'm not posting, let's say, publicly, but a little bit more into my private life over here. Well, not so private, but you know what I'm saying. A little bit something bonus for you guys. I set up an Instagram account. So if you go to scannerschool.com/Instagram, that will take you over to my personal Instagram account. A little bit more what's going on in my life and a little bit as to what's going on behind the scenes here at the podcast with my personal business and that kind of stuff. So again, if you want to learn a bit more about me, that's an easy way to do so. So one of the things we failed to mention during the interview is the actual frequency that you need to know to monitor the MilAir band. So the UHF MilAir band that would be something that Mike will be scanning would be like the range from 225 megahertz all the way up to 380 megahertz. And you can generally find us as a call out on the scanners. So there are many scanners out there today that besides the Pro 2096 and the BCD 536 HP that Michael's using, that will cover this range. Just look at the spec sheet for your scanner or one that you're looking at and see if it calls out the MilAir UHF band. And while you're at it too, it should also do the MilAir VHF band. Again, I want to thank all of you who have supported the Scanner School podcast in one way or another. There's been a couple of you who have been supporting us via Patreon, and those are Mike Beebe and Kenneth Fowler. Mark, Kenneth, thank you so much for being our Patreon supporters. If anybody else wants to help support us, you can do so several ways. Patreon is just one of them, but Patreon does give you some benefits for supporting us. If you go to scannerschool.com/support, that's an easy way for you to find out ways that you can help support us. If you're an Amazon shopper, if you like to buy things off of eBay, or maybe you just want to do a one-time PayPal donation to help support the podcast and keep it going, that's a great way to do so. So another great way that you can support the Scanner School podcast is very simple. Just leave us a review on iTunes. It would help us out tremendously because it does help our rankings and does help other people find our podcast when we have higher rankings. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for supporting the Scanner School podcast, where we teach you everything that you need to know about the scanner radio hobby. Next week, we're going to start off another little mini-series, and I think you guys will find that very interesting. We're going to talk about the entire receive path from the antenna to the back of your radio and everything that's in between there and how to configure it, set it up, plug it all in, and get you set up on a really, really good receiving station. So until then, I want to remind you that the session notes for everything we've talked about are located online at scannerschool.com/session27. Michael, thank you so much for being a guest today. So if anybody wants to find out Michael's page again, we have it linked right in our show notes. So we'll talk to you all next week on the Scanner School podcast, where we teach you everything that you need to know about the scanner radio hobby. I'm Phil Lichtenberger, 73.
Thanks for listening to the Scanner School podcast. Be sure to visit www.scannerschool.com to access the show notes and bonus content.